we'll be discussing the much anticipated verdict on the trial of Derek Chauvin.
Followed by a look at a gun violence epidemic that is sweeping the nation.
And finally, we're committed to bringing you the news, views, and info to go on this episode of the Report Roundtable Discussion. I'm Bree Slick.
I'm Jorge Flores.
I'm Tristan Magluno.
And I'm Amanda Mendoza. As you can see, we are continuing to practice social distancing and are going to conduct our episodes via Zoom for the foreseeable future. Although we cannot be together in person, we invite you all to continue to be a part of the discussion. Follow us on Twitter at The Report CSUF or on our Titan TV Instagram at Titan TV CSUF to keep in touch with us and our new contents.
Guys, starting off with our first story, the jurors on the Derek Chauvin trial reached a historic verdict on Tuesday afternoon. The jury found Chauvin guilty of second-degree murder, third-degree murder, and second-degree manslaughter of George Floyd. The judge has yet to assign Chauvin's sentencing, but has stated that the date will be 8 weeks from now. The judge has also revoked Chauvin's bail and discharged his bond. This comes as a monumental news to those who fight for accountability and justice against the police excessive use of force. Floyd's family was watching in a nearby hotel room as the news broke and crowds gathered in victory upon the declaration of the charges. CNN national correspondent Daryl Forges has more.
Derek Chauvin now in a restricted housing unit in prison. For his safety, he cannot be with the general population. Now, yesterday, you could just feel the overall mood change here in Minneapolis once that verdict was announced. In fact, the people here, as well as George Floyd's family, breathing a big sigh of relief.
Unintentional second-degree murder, third-degree murder, second-degree manslaughter.
The verdict heard around the world.
Guilty, guilty, guilty.
Derek Chauvin looking on, hearing the word guilty on all three charges, then taken away in handcuffs to a Minnesota correctional facility to await sentencing.
Bail is revoked, bond is discharged, and the defendant is remanded to the custody.
Chauvin could face up to 40 years in prison for second-degree unintentional murder, up to 25 years for third-degree murder, and up to 10 years for second-degree manslaughter.
8 weeks from now, we will have sentencing.
But for activists, Chauvin's conviction for the murder of George Floyd is just one step towards racial justice.
Just because we got one victory is not enough. We need to stay woke.
Floyd's family calling on Washington to act.
We have to pass the George Floyd Policing Act. We have to stick together and continue to fight.
In a call with the family Tuesday, President Joe Biden promising to deliver.
We're going to get a lot more done. We're going to do a lot.
The family says they are pleased Chauvin is being held accountable, but there is still more work to be done to achieve equality.
We're going to continue this journey, and we must not let his death be his last word.
And in Washington, the Department of Justice has announced they will be looking into the Minneapolis Police Department's excessive force, the way they've used that, as well as their police reform situation here. They're going to be looking into several things, including whether or not they used excessive force on protesters last summer. In Minneapolis, I'm Daryl Forges.
Today, guys, heavy news that we have. First of all, I want to mention that I am proud and I am content. I express my enjoyment of this news. The verdict was just and was fair. We needed the justice for the George Floyd's family. However, upon many people, they are calling that the verdict is not justice, but just accountability. Barack Obama, quote unquote, true justice is much more than just a single verdict in a single trial. And I believe that this must be true because even though we got justice for George Floyd, there is a lot of racism over the system and the police brutality is just increasing. We are watching the news, how mass shootings, they're increasing as well. And most of the times, even though if they're just shootings, they are about police officers and their police brutality towards people. However, with this case, this is historic because for the first time, the Black Lives Matter movement is increasing its power. And now this could change the social system in the future. So I want to ask you, Tristan, what do you think about this? Do you think this is justice or if this is just accountability? What are your thoughts?
You know, Jorge, I think this whole landmark trial, it's a step in the right direction in terms of justice, but I feel it's most importantly accountability. It gives hope to Americans that, the police will be further held accountable for hopefully all of their future actions, if it's justified or if it's not. Like, it's not the checkered flag. This is just the beginning. And as President Biden said, he said, quote, "It's not enough. We can't stop here. We're going to deliver real change and reform. We can and we must do more to reduce the likelihood that tragedies like this will never happen again," end quote. And to me, when you look at this whole situation, I think that it's systemic racism. It's the root of the problem. But if you don't know, the United States police force, it was formed around racism. It was because of slave patrols back in the day. And historically, Black people have been oppressed by the police. So it's important for police officers to realize that systemic racism is a problem. Like, when you take the badge of a police officer, you have to realize what you're getting into. You're going to be encountering all these situations where race is going to be a factor. And the only way to counter that is reform. So it's a step in the right direction, but we just got to keep holding these officers accountable. So Amanda, what are your thoughts on this situation?
Well, Tristan, to quote Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, she said, "Today's verdict is a major step on the path toward justice and accountability." And I agree. Hearing that Chauvin was at the very least held accountable for his despicable actions gives me hope that the other officers in this case will be tried, and that officers from here on out will have to be held accountable for their actions. I don't think justice is being held accountable initially. I think accountability is the first step. However, I think justice will only come, as you mentioned, once we reform the system, once we ensure that people aren't attacked on their account of race or on any account unnecessarily. And so I think that's really important to keep in mind when we're separating the terms accountability and justice. What are your thoughts, Bree?
The media has changed the world so much. I love what you guys have to say, but I want to kind of go towards the media right now. Through hashtags, through tweets, just through videos alone. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, how much is a video? And I think that, especially in this case, and a lot of cases that have been popping up, if it wasn't recorded, then one, it probably wouldn't have made headlines. And two, the verdict for this case, it wouldn't have ended the way it did. So I really love that people are using that. Everyone has a phone on them now, so it's holding people accountable like you guys were talking about. So definitely we're going to be talking about this more in the future, but how about we move on to more national news? Tragic reports of shootings all across the country continue to make headlines. Last Sunday, 7-year-old Jaslyn Smith was at a McDonald's drive-thru with her father in Chicago, Illinois, when an unknown suspect opened fire into their car. This comes less than a month after Chicago lost another child, 13-year-old Adam Toledo, to gunshot wounds inflicted by a police officer. Most recently, 16-year-old Makhia Bryant was shot and killed by a Columbus, Ohio police officer just 30 minutes before Chauvin's jury verdicts were announced. In response to an increased number of gun violence cases in the past month alone, President Biden released a statement where he asserts that gun violence is an epidemic in the United States. Terrible, terrible tragedies, and they just keep happening over and over again. We are seeing a cycle of similar stories in the news. And when it comes to gun violence, CNN reported that just last month, there have been at least 50 mass shootings since the Atlanta spa shooting and 147 mass shootings since the beginning of 2021 in the United States alone. With all of this gun violence that's happened in recent years, I want to hear what you guys have to say about this. Do you think that people feel less safe here? Are they worried about their loved ones? Tristan, what do you have to say about it?
Well, Bree, gun violence, it's a serious problem. As Biden said, I agree with him. This is an epidemic and it is a national embarrassment. We're getting so desensitized to what's been happening around our nation. And it seems like every day there's just a new shooting. And I just want to add another detail in terms of a statistic. According to Gun Violence Archive, there have now been over 13,000 deaths due to the gun violence in 2021. Okay. And to answer your question, should people feel concerned about these tragedies? I mean, personally, for me, I'd say no. Why? Because look, when you look at these situations, it is tragic and saddening to see all these young lives being ended abruptly in such a tragic manner. But it's all about the situation. Like, when you watch these body cam footages, it can be truthfully tough to discern who's in the right and who's in the wrong. But it all relates to one essence, and that's guns. And gun violence is nothing new, and there has to be a reform. Okay, so Biden's executive orders, it's going to be good, but Congress has to do its job. Amanda, what do you think about this whole gun violence situation?
Well, Tristan, personally, I think that this is absolutely terrifying. These shootings are out of control. Now people are afraid to go to schools, malls, restaurants. And as you mentioned, Bree, Jaislyn Adams, only 7 years old, was murdered at a McDonald's. Just that fact is tragic and terrifying. In fact, her aunt said, quote, "Y'all, please put the guns down. Our kids want to play. My kids can't even go out the door because of this violence. Please put the guns down," end quote. And just hearing this statement was absolutely heartbreaking. So in my opinion, what is the point of having a gun if it is hurting so many people? And I understand that many people claim that having a gun makes them feel protected, but is it worth it to have a gun when we constantly hear of the harm done with it? Personally, I think if we at least ban guns, or at least, reform guns, I think it could pave the way to a brighter future. And while I do appreciate that Biden is taking the first step to do so by stopping the proliferation of ghost guns, I think his reform could be stronger. What do you think, Jorge?
Exactly. And guys, you just mentioned it very clearly. We need an executive order from President Biden's administration. Now, I want to talk about the children. People who they are just learning, these little children, they're just kids and they're learning in their schools. And now having this kind of news, they are going to affect these children. Because what happens to children from different communities, whether they are white, Black, Latino, Asian, they're going to start fearing themselves just because they are from that race. And I think that's going to be a serious problem, not just for the present, but for the future of our nation. So this reform is needed. Some people might argue as well that the gun is not a problem, but the person who is holding it. I say that the problem is the gun just because anyone has access to it. And that's something that we really need to change in our government. So hopefully the Biden administration can do something about it. But Tristan, what do you tell us about some vaccine update news?
Talking about the vaccine, President Biden's plan to expand eligibility to everyone 16 and older is well underway throughout California. Many officials, including President Biden, Vice President Harris, Dr. Fauci, Governor Newsom, and LA Mayor Eric Garcetti are encouraging everyone who is 16 years and older to get the vaccine. The Moderna vaccine is eligible for anyone who's 18 and older, while the Pfizer has been given the green light for 16 and older. This comes just after the CDC announced that about 130 million adults have received the first dose of the vaccine, while about 84 million are fully vaccinated. With such optimism in sight, President Biden has now altered his COVID-19 vaccine plan, as his goal of 200 million vaccines administered has been met a week before his first 100 days in office. Now, according to the CDC, there's about 3.5 million vaccinations daily. Now, these are great numbers to see. It gives optimism and hope that we're well on our way to herd immunity, but we must keep our guard up because there are those who are still reluctant to get the vaccine. According to a poll conducted by Monmouth University, they say that 1 in 5 Americans claim that they're never going to get the vaccine. And they say that political party may have a deciding factor to it. 43% of Republicans say no, while 5% Democrats refuse to get the vaccine. So although there's been countless tests and research that these vaccines are helpful and then they're going to keep us safe from the coronavirus and its ill effects, I wanted to ask you guys, how important do you think it is for people to even get the vaccine in the first place? And do you think there should be any incentives? Because I know from what I've seen is that there are a lot of incentives to get people vaccinated, such as Krispy Kreme. I know they're offering free donuts if you show their vaccination card. So I wanted to ask, it seems like people don't really understand how this decision will impact the future. Jorge, what are your thoughts?
Tristan, I really like that you mentioned these points because now that you talk about the political party and its influence for people to get the vaccine, I'll say that this is more than just blue or red. I mean, this is a public health issue. And I really recommend everyone to get the vaccine because this is going to really benefit not only businesses, but also this is going to make it better for our education process. We need in-person classes. And as time is passing by, more people that are going to get more confident of being in these in-person classes, businesses that are going to reopen. So in other words, getting the vaccine, it's going to make the new normality as a reality coming soon. So I really encourage people to take it. I think it will be at least good for the companies to still giving these incentives in order for their employees as well to be more secure and safe. Also, guys, I want to ask you, what do you think about these COVID passports in the future? There is probably a new kind of rule that it's going to make people to show proof whenever they're going to fly from one place to another, and they need proof that they got the COVID vaccine 19, or at least that they have some kind of proof that they are not infected. So what are your thoughts on this as well, Brie?
You know, the COVID vaccine passport, I think that it's great for the time being. I don't think this could be a forever thing because in the end, if we start bringing all of these incentives and the COVID passports, we're going to basically be forcing people to get it if they want to do anything outside of their home. And we can't do that because we can't force people to get the vaccine. People, it needs to be their choice. And if they don't want to get it, then we are living in a nation where we let people make choices for themselves. We cannot force them to do that. Otherwise, they're going to turn on the government and they're not going to be happy with them even more as they aren't. I definitely think that pushing forward, I think that people who aren't going to get vaccinated, I think that it could hurt numbers, but I do think that Biden's plan for 200 million vaccines is completely doable. Just think about in the past weeks since we've been doing this show and we've been talking about people getting vaccinated, the numbers have jumped so drastically. And I think it's great. You know, 130 million people have received their dose with just one shot. And I think it's awesome seeing that number grow. And I hope that we can continue with giving people the right to get their vaccine and not change that because of the nation we're in. Amanda, what do you think?
Well, Bree, if I'm being honest, I'm going to have to disagree because should we really be catering to the minority if getting the vaccine can help the majority of people? And also in regards to COVID passports, I think if this becomes more widespread, I think people who will not take the vaccine will start to feel isolated from their friends and their family. But since this may not be a law or nothing's at least set in stone, I think this would be a great incentive for people to go out there and stay safe and ensure they're taking the vaccines because it's unfair for people who are vaccinated to feel unsafe after they've had the vaccine. So honestly, I don't see a problem with having these COVID passports to go to concerts and venues. So that way people who are safe can stay safe and people who do not want to have the vaccine can stay in a bubble and ensure that they're not spreading COVID to anyone else. But that's just my opinion. So moving on to our next story. Earlier this week, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, also known as ICE, as well as the Customs and Border Protection Agency, announced that they will no longer be using the terms alien, illegal alien, and assimilation in reference to U.S. immigrants on policy documents and communications with the public. The term alien will become non-citizen or migrant. Assimilation will become integration, and illegal will become undocumented. This is groundbreaking, as many immigrant advocates have condemned the use of words and phrases that dehumanize immigrants. It is the Biden administration's goal to build a more humane immigration system following the controversial rhetoric former President Trump implemented during his time in office. So everyone, personally, I think terms such as illegal alien creates this narrative that sounds like immigrants aren't anything like American citizens, and that they're simply trying to come over and invade, and that they're just here to break rules. So in my opinion, because of popular media, I associate the words alien, as I mentioned, with invasion. As ABC 7 News wrote, quote, "Changing agency language in this way marks a sharp departure from the practices of the Trump administration, which frequently leveraged controversial rhetoric from the campaign trail into enforcement agency communications, including those to the public," end quote. So everyone, do you find any problems with the usage of the terms alien, illegal alien, and assimilation? Do you think that changing these terms is a step in the right direction toward equality, a way to differentiate presidencies, or do you think it's just all performative? What are your thoughts, Bree?
I absolutely don't like the use of the word alien. You know, the word really reminds me of like an outer space alien or monsters trying to come in and take over the world, because that's what we use it for in this society for the most part. You know, humanizing non-citizens, I think, can definitely make a difference in how they are viewed in our society. It's going to take a lot of time, though. It's not just going to be picked up right away. I mean, think about it. Some of the things our parents said when they were our age are seen as completely wrong now. We do not say it. And it's taken many years for that vocabulary to be changed. And there's still select people who still use it to this day. I hope that this sticks and will continue with future presidencies, because it's possible that another president could come in and change it back to how it was before. So I really hope that this vocabulary is going to stay for in the future as well. Jorge, what do you think?
In my point of view, I have this thought that this is a problem that we need to go deeper. So the problem is the immigration system, and we need changes on it. And hopefully under this Biden administration, we're gonna get something done. However, changing the narrative and changing the wording, that helps a lot. my family who comes from another country, they always felt like hearing the word illegal makes you feel scared. And whether probably it's not my case or other people's cases, most of the people who they come from another country, they come undocumented, and that's the right word. So having this change from illegal to undocumented, I feel very happy about this news because finally we can talk properly. And in my opinion, I think everyone should talk like this because it's not about the race, or we're not talking that they are illegal. No one is illegal. Most people, sometimes they could be undocumented, but that's a huge difference. And that's gonna make people to feel at least more welcome and more human. What do you think, Tristan?
Jorge, I really like what you had to say there, bringing the humility aspect into the situation, because folks, words, they harm people, okay? When you call someone an alien, it's simply dehumanizing. And with the way the children are being treated at the border and how the whole migrant situation is panning out right now, they're being dehumanized even more verbally. This is all perpetuated because of President Trump's rhetoric. I mean, back in 2018, he called the migrants, he called them animals, okay? That's really dehumanizing. And all these terms, alien, assimilation, illegal, these are clearly outdated. And it's been long overdue for people to stop saying these terminology. So by changing these terms into something more appropriate, such as migrants or undocumented, it brings a sense of humanity to these migrants, okay? The migrants, they have emotions. They're people like you and me. Just because they may not understand what ICE is saying doesn't mean they don't feel. So I give my commend and respect to ICE for making these changes, and I hope they stick through future presidential terms. Moving on to some lighter news. For many Muslims around the world, the holy month of Ramadan is being celebrated amidst the pandemic for the second year in a row. As California begins to open back up, one congregation in Sacramento continues to lead prayers and worship under COVID safety guidelines. These celebrations are offered both in person and also virtually online for those who prefer to worship at home. For more on this story, we turn to reporter Stephanie Lin.
Imam Amr Dabur leads his congregants through evening prayer. This month, significant for millions of Muslims around the world, celebrating their second Ramadan during a pandemic. Here in Sacramento,
the goal is, like I said, to better connect with God and better strengthen your spirituality and soul.
Congregants at the Sacramento Area League of Associated Muslims carefully worship under public health guidelines, wearing face masks and going through socially distanced motions of prayer, each person also using their own individual prayer mat.
This is a special month for Muslim community to show Sacramento community how peaceful this religion is. It's not what they hear in the media. It's not what some individuals do.
Fasting, a part of Ramadan tradition, meaning nothing can enter the body between sunrise and sunset, raising the question of whether getting the COVID-19 vaccine for this community could be delayed.
The vaccine is 100% okay to take even while fasting.
The Imam tonight joining other religious leaders of the Muslim faith in supporting congregants to get vaccinated.
It's all about nutrition. Vaccine is not a nutrition. It doesn't qualify.
Adding most of his congregants have already taken steps to get their shots.
Yes, I did the first one last 2 weeks, and I have another one tomorrow.
I do plan on getting it pretty soon whilst I'm fasting.
This 18-year-old telling us she's looking for an appointment. As soon as one opens up.
Yes, 100%. Opportunity presents itself, I'll take it.
We should be more encouraged to take the vaccine since we want to come to the masjid and do the prayers, and there will be a lot of gathering. So it's our responsibility to take our part.
The message that Ramadan brings us as Muslims this year is a message of hope.
Hope of better days to come as California continues to reopen. And as an additional safety measure, the center here does require everyone who chooses to enter for prayer indoors get a temperature check. Reporting from Sacramento, Stephanie Lin, KCRA 3 News.
Happy Diversity Month, Titans. All month long, we'll be celebrating the advancements and achievements made in our diverse society. This week, we'll be highlighting some amazing acts of kindness and inclusion. In one Detroit Lake, Michigan's middle school, a video is going viral on social media after a group of 6th graders are shown helping their friend Kale Hannas score a touchdown. Kale, who has cerebral palsy, has always dreamed of being a football player. When he told his friends about his goals, they helped their quarterback block the other team so he could score a touchdown. This heartwarming story captured the hearts of thousands on social media, including the Minnesota Vikings.
If you want to do something
Do it.
Got one in! And what a heartfelt story that is. You know, this video shows some true friendship and proves that disability or setback, it doesn't have to affect your dreams. Now that's all the time we have for today on the Report Roundtable Discussion. Have a safe week, everyone, and stay tuned for more news, views, and info. I'm Bree Slick.
I'm Tristan McLunog.
I'm Amanda Mendoza.
And I'm Jorge Flores. As always, stay fresh-footed.